My name is Rachel Wilson. I'm 30 years old. And I discovered the true price of family belonging 3 months ago. Exactly $3,270. That's what my sister Stephanie charged me for a dinner, where she told me to find another table because I wasn't a real Wilson. After 27 years as part of my adoptive family, I finally understood that for some people, blood really is thicker than water. The invisible wall I'd felt between us since childhood suddenly materialized in the form of a restaurant bill that nearly drained my savings account. If you've ever wondered whether adoption truly makes you family, my story might give you an answer. If you're watching this right now, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and let me know where you're tuning in from. Family stories hit differently depending on where we come from, and I'd love to know your perspective. I don't remember much about my life before the Wilsons. Just fragments. The smell of cigarettes in different foster homes, a stuffed rabbit with one ear, and a constant feeling of impermanence. According to the paperwork, I'd been in the system since infancy, bouncing between 3 different placements before Martha and George Wilson adopted me when I was 3 years old. The Wilsons lived in a spacious colonial in Connecticut. Martha worked as a high school English teacher while George was an accountant at a mid-sized firm. They already had a biological daughter, Stephanie, who was 7 when I arrived. 2 years after my adoption, they had another biological child, Thomas. From the photo albums, our early years look picture perfect. Martha dressed us in coordinating outfits for family portraits. George taught each of us to ride bikes in the same driveway. We celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes and opened Christmas presents in matching pajamas. But photos can be deceiving. The differences in how we were treated were subtle at first. When Stephanie got a new dress for a school event, my mother would say, "We'll find something nice in your closet, Rachel." When Thomas struggled with math homework, my father would spend hours at the kitchen table working through problems with him. When I needed help, he'd suggest I try a little harder before asking for assistance. I became determined to earn my place in the family. I studied relentlessly, bringing home straight A's. I joined the same activities as Stephanie: dance, piano, Girl Scouts, hoping shared experiences might bridge the gap between us. But the more I achieved, the more she seemed to resent me. "Mom, Rachel's copying me again." She'd complain when I signed up for student council in middle school. "Stephanie was there first, honey," my mother would explain gently. "Maybe find your own thing?" Stephanie had a talent for exclusion that appeared innocent to our parents. She'd forget to tell me about family plans until the last minute. During sleepovers with her friends, she'd invite Thomas to join for movies but send me to bed. When relatives visited, she'd introduce me with, "This is Rachel, she's adopted." As if that explained everything about me. Thomas was different. 2 years younger than me, he often seemed confused by the dynamics. He'd share his toys freely and include me in games, but he never stood up to Stephanie. When she'd make a cutting remark about my real parents not wanting me, he'd look uncomfortable but remain silent. "It's not worth fighting about," he told me once when we were teenagers. "You know how Stephanie gets." I did know. I'd experienced years of her escalating hostility by then. When Stephanie turned 16, our parents threw her an elaborate party at our country club. 50 guests, a live band, and a custom dress that cost more than our monthly grocery budget. I spent the evening carrying trays of appetizers because someone needs to help the caterers, Rachel. And you're so good at making people feel welcome. I wasn't a guest at my own sister's celebration, I was staff. That night, I started a journal where I documented every slight, every exclusion, every moment that reminded me I was somehow less than a full member of the Wilson family. Writing helped me process the hurt, but it also created an undeniable record of patterns I might otherwise have convinced myself were imagined. I found other coping mechanisms too. I cultivated deep friendships outside our home. The Patel family next door often invited me for dinner, and Mrs. Patel would brush my hair afterward, something Martha never did. My English teacher, Miss Renata, became a mentor who praised my writing and encouraged me to pursue journalism. My best friend Emma's parents treated me like a second daughter, including me on family vacations to their lake house, where I felt a belonging that eluded me at home. Still, I desperately wanted my adoptive family's approval. Each time Martha absent-mindedly touched Stephanie's hair or George put his arm around Thomas's shoulders at his baseball games, I felt a physical ache. I studied family photos looking for moments when they'd shown me the same natural affection, but those images were rare. By the time I reached high school, I'd constructed a carefully maintained facade. To teachers and classmates, I was Rachel Wilson. Honor student, newspaper editor, volunteer, perfect daughter of the respected Wilson family. Only in my journal did I acknowledge the truth. I was an outsider with an insider's view, forever looking through the window at a family I could see but never quite touch. My acceptance letter to NYU arrived on a Tuesday in April. Full academic scholarship. When I shared the news at dinner, my father nodded and said, "That's nice, Rachel," before turning to discuss Stephanie's upcoming prom. My mother's response came later when she cornered me in the kitchen. "New York City is so expensive, sweetie. Are you sure you wouldn't rather attend Connecticut State? You could live at home and save money." What she meant was, "You could stay where we can see you, where you won't forget your place." I recognized the subtle manipulation for what it was. "The scholarship covers everything," I replied. "I won't need financial support." Something flickered across her face, disappointment or relief, I couldn't tell which. Moving to New York felt like exhaling after holding my breath for 18 years. My dorm room was tiny, but it was mine. My roommate Jasmine had no preconceived notions about me or my worth. My professors evaluated my work on its merits, not against the backdrop of family dynamics. For the first time, I existed as just Rachel, not adopted Rachel, not the Wilsons' charity case. Just me. I limited my trips home to major holidays and brief summer visits. Each return to Connecticut felt like slipping back into an old, uncomfortable sweater that had once been my second skin. The house remained unchanged. Stephanie's dance trophies still dominated the mantel. Thomas's sports photos lined the hallway, and my academic awards were tucked away in a drawer in the guest room where I now slept. Meanwhile, I built a new life. I double-majored in marketing and English, interned at prestigious firms, and graduated with honors. I secured an entry-level position at a boutique marketing agency in Manhattan, where my creative campaigns quickly caught the attention of senior management. By 26, I was managing my own team and apartment hunting in Brooklyn. Stephanie followed a different path. She attended our parents' alma mater, joined their former social clubs, and moved back to Connecticut after graduation. At 28, she married Bradley Williams, a financial advisor whose family belonged to the same country club as our parents. They bought a 5-bedroom Tudor-style home 15 minutes from our parents and began hosting elaborate dinner parties where Stephanie could showcase her decorating skills and Bradley's wine collection. Thomas drifted after high school, taking classes at community college while working odd jobs. Our parents funded his multiple career explorations: a semester at culinary school, an aborted attempt at real estate licensing, a brief stint managing a friend's band. Each failure was met with understanding and fresh financial support, the same support I'd never requested because I knew it wouldn't be offered. When our parents retired George from his now partner position at the accounting firm and Martha from 30 years of teaching, they sold our childhood home and downsized to a luxury condo closer to Stephanie. They spent most weekends at her house, helping with gardening projects and babysitting after she had her first child. My infrequent visits became increasingly strained. One Thanksgiving, I arrived to find the family mid-photo shoot with a professional photographer. "Oh, Rachel," my mother exclaimed. "We didn't know if you'd make it, so we started without you." The photographer looked confused. "Should we wait for her to change? I can take a few with the full family." "No need," Stephanie interjected. "We've got plenty of good ones. Besides, these are for the Christmas cards, and we want them to look cohesive." I stood in my travel clothes holding my overnight bag, watching them pose in coordinating autumn colors. Thomas caught my eye and shrugged apologetically but didn't speak up. That night, I booked a hotel room for the remainder of my stay. When I turned 28, I began therapy. Dr. Lena Michaels specialized in adoption trauma and family systems. In her sunlit office overlooking Union Square, I unpacked decades of subtle rejection and its impact on my adult relationships. "You've internalized the message that you're unworthy of unconditional love," she observed during one session. It affects how you approach romantic relationships, friendships, even your career. She was right. I'd been dating Michael Jenkins, a kind and patient architectural engineer, for nearly 2 years, but I constantly tested his commitment, waiting for him to discover I wasn't enough and leave. Have you ever directly addressed these feelings with your family? Dr. Michaels asked. I hadn't. The Wilson family operated on a policy of polite fiction. We didn't discuss uncomfortable truths. We maintained appearances. Michael encouraged me to try. They might not even realize how they've made you feel, he suggested one evening in our favorite neighborhood bistro. People get caught in patterns they don't see. You don't know my sister, I replied, twisting my napkin. Stephanie doesn't do self-reflection. Maybe not, he conceded. But you'll never know unless you try. And Rachel, even if nothing changes with them, confronting this might help you find peace. Inspired by therapy and Michael's support, I made a commitment to engage more authentically with my family. I called my parents weekly instead of monthly. I sent thoughtful birthday gifts. I asked Thomas to meet me for lunch when I visited Connecticut for work. I even sent Stephanie a handwritten congratulations card when she announced her second pregnancy. These efforts yielded mixed results. My mother seemed pleasantly surprised by my increased contact but maintained a certain guardedness. My father was polite but distant. Thomas welcomed the connection but remained conflict avoidant. Stephanie acknowledged my overtures with cool civility while continuing to organize family events without consulting me. I was learning that family reconciliation required willing participants on all sides. Nevertheless, I persisted, hoping that maturity and distance might have created space for new understanding. This hope, fragile but persistent, led me straight into the disaster of my parents' 40th anniversary celebration. The group chat notification pinged on a Monday morning while I was reviewing quarterly marketing projections. Stephanie. Created Group Wilson 40th anniversary. Stephanie. Mom and Dad's big day is coming up. Time to plan something special for their 40 years of marriage. Ideas? I smiled, glad to be included from the start. This could be my opportunity to meaningfully contribute to a family milestone. Me. How about a weekend getaway? I could research some nice B&Bs in Vermont. They always talked about visiting there in fall. Thomas. That sounds nice. Count me in for whatever we decide. Stephanie. I was thinking something more elegant. They deserve a proper celebration, not just a rustic weekend. My suggestion dismissed so quickly. The familiar sting returned, but I pushed past it. Me. What did you have in mind? Stephanie. Le Cirque in Manhattan. The chef is a client of Bradley's firm, so he can get us a private dining room. We could invite extended family and their closest friends. Thomas. Sounds expensive. Stephanie. It's their 40th anniversary, Thomas. We can all chip in. Besides, Rachel lives right there in the city. She can coordinate details. I bristled at being assigned clerical duties rather than meaningful planning, but determined to stay positive, I responded, Me. Happy to help with Manhattan logistics. Should we discuss budget first? Also, do we know if they'd prefer a weekend lunch or evening dinner? 3 hours passed with no response. That evening, new messages appeared. Stephanie. Evening dinner for sure. More elegant. I've already spoken with Mom. Casually, didn't spoil the surprise. She mentioned always wanting to try Le Cirque. Thomas. Sounds good to me. Me. Did you want me to contact the restaurant about availability and pricing? Stephanie. Already handled. Bradley's connection got us the pavilion room for the last Saturday in June. 7 p.m. She'd made decisions without waiting for input. I took a deep breath before responding. Me. That's great. What can I do to help? Stephanie. Just show up. I'll handle invitations, menu selection, and decor. I'm thinking a through the decades theme with photos from their 40 years together. I had photos she might not candid shots from my college graduation, their visit to my first New York apartment, the Christmas we all went ice skating in Rockefeller Center. I tried again. Me. I have some great photos I could contribute for the display. Stephanie. Thanks. But I've already gone through all the family albums. I have everything I need. Family albums that remained at her house or our parents', containing carefully curated versions of our history. My exclusion was happening again, in real time. Over the next few weeks, details emerged piecemeal. Stephanie had invited 25 guests without consulting Thomas or me about relatives we might want to include. She'd selected a Prix Fixe menu featuring expensive wines paired with each course. She'd commissioned a custom cake replica of our parents' wedding dessert. Throughout this process, I received no information about costs or expectations for contribution. When I directly asked in the group chat, Stephanie responded vaguely, "Stephanie, don't worry about it for now. We'll figure out the finances afterward." Thomas sent me a private text. "Sorry about Steph. You know how she gets with planning things." I did know. I also knew discussing finances in advance was standard practice for shared expenses. Her avoidance made me uneasy, but I didn't want to create conflict before our parents' celebration. Michael noticed my growing anxiety as the event approached. One evening, while cooking dinner in his apartment, he broached the subject. "You've been checking your phone every 5 minutes, he observed, gently taking it from my hand. "Another update from Stephanie?" I sighed. "She's now decided we should all give speeches, but mine should be limited to 2 minutes, while hers will be the main toast." Michael set down his cooking spoon and turned to face me. "Rachel, are you sure you want to go through with this? You've been stressed for weeks." I stirred the pasta sauce, avoiding his eyes. "They're my parents too. I should be there." "Yes, you should," he agreed, "but not as a second-class participant. Maybe this is the time to set some boundaries." And ruin their anniversary? That would just confirm everything Stephanie has always implied, that I'm not really committed to the family. Michael wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Or maybe it's time to stop trying to prove yourself to people who should love you unconditionally already." His words resonated, but I couldn't bring myself to withdraw. Some stubborn part of me still hoped for acceptance, still believed that perfect behavior might finally earn me full membership in the Wilson family. As the date approached, I scheduled a session with Dr. Michaels specifically to discuss strategies for navigating the dinner. She helped me prepare responses to potential slights and create an exit plan if things became too difficult. I selected a classic black dress that projected confidence, bought a thoughtful gift, a custom photo album with my favorite pictures of my parents throughout the years, and steeled myself for what would likely be a challenging evening. The night before the dinner, I texted Thomas, "Nervous about tomorrow. Wish we'd been more involved in planning." His response came quickly, "Me too. But let's just focus on making it special for Mom and Dad. We can deal with Steph later." I went to sleep that night with a knot in my stomach, unaware that the upcoming evening would permanently alter my relationship with my family. Le Cirque's facade glowed golden in the early evening light as I approached, gift bag in hand. Through the windows, I could see the restaurant's famous circus-inspired decor, whimsical monkey sconces, hand-painted murals, and crystal chandeliers suspended like elegant trapeze artists. A uniformed doorman nodded as I entered the marble foyer. "The Wilson party?" The maitre asked when I gave my name. "Yes, several guests have arrived. Follow me to the pavilion room, please." My heels clicked against the polished floor as we wound through tables of Manhattan's elite enjoying their Saturday dinners. The private dining room was separated from the main restaurant by etched glass doors that opened to reveal a space transformed by Stephanie's vision. Cream tablecloths draped over round tables adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces in my parents' wedding colors. A table near the entrance displayed framed photographs chronicling their 4 decades together. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Standing near the champagne tower was Stephanie, resplendent in a designer gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent, directing staff with imperious gestures. "Rachel!" my mother exclaimed, breaking away from a conversation with elderly relatives. Martha Wilson looked elegant in pale blue silk, her silver hair swept into a sophisticated updo. "We didn't expect you so early." The dinner was scheduled for 7. It was 6:45. "I wanted to make sure I had time to say hello before things got busy," I replied, kissing her cheek. "Always so conscientious," she said with a pat to my arm before turning. "Look who's here, George." My father approached, martini in hand. At 68, he remained fit and distinguished, though his once dark hair had faded to salt and pepper. "Rachel," he nodded. "Nice dress." Thanks, Dad. Happy anniversary. I handed him the carefully wrapped album. I got you something special. You shouldn't have, he said, but accepted the package. Stephanie's handling gifts on the side table. Before I could respond, Stephanie materialized beside us. Mom, Aunt Louise needs you for a minute, she said, barely acknowledging my presence. Dad, the bar is running low on your favorite scotch. I told them to open the reserve bottle. They drifted away, my gift still unopened in my father's hand. Thomas appeared at my elbow, looking uncomfortable in his suit. Hey Rach, you look nice. Thanks. You too. How's the coding job going? He shrugged. It's a paycheck. Not sure it's my thing long term. Have you met Stephanie's college roommate's brother yet? She's been trying to set us up. I teased. Grateful for his friendly presence. God, no, hiding from him, actually. He grinned, then lowered his voice. Listen, about tonight. Rachel. Stephanie's voice cut through our conversation. You're at table 3. We're about to start seating for dinner. Table 1 would be the immediate family. Table 3, I soon discovered, positioned me between our father's ancient former secretary and a distant cousin I hadn't seen since childhood. From this vantage point, I could barely see my parents at the central table, where Stephanie, Bradley, Thomas, and our parents' closest friends were seated. Bradley Williams nodded to me from the head table, adjusting his Rolex with manicured fingers. Rachel, good to see you. Still working at that little marketing shop? The agency has 40 employees and 3 major industry awards this year, I corrected politely. But yes, still there. Recently promoted to creative director. Wonderful, he replied without interest. Did Stephanie tell you we're breaking ground on the pool house next month? Your father's been giving us excellent tax advice on the investment properties. Before I could respond, servers appeared with the first course. Seared scallops with truffle foam. Wine stewards followed, pouring generous amounts of Pouligny Montrachet into delicate crystal glasses. I noted the vintage far more expensive than my usual selection. Conversation flowed around me as relatives caught up on family news. I made appropriate small talk, complimenting Aunt Louise on her jewelry and asking my cousin about her children. Throughout the appetizer and soup courses, I made several attempts to visit my parents' table, only to find myself intercepted by servers or blocked by Stephanie's strategic placement of other guests. When the main course arrived, aged prime rib with seasonal vegetables, my father stood to offer a brief toast, thanking everyone for coming. Stephanie immediately followed with her own speech, a carefully crafted narrative of our parents' love story. And, as the daughter who has been privileged to witness their extraordinary partnership up close for 34 years, she concluded, raising her glass, I can truly say they've taught me everything I know about love, commitment, and family values. The room applauded. I clapped mechanically, noting her subtle emphasis on her longer tenure in the family. And now, Stephanie continued, we have a special slideshow prepared to celebrate 40 years of Wilson family memories. The lights dimmed as a projection screen descended from the ceiling. Music swelled their wedding song as images appeared. Their honeymoon in Bermuda, the purchase of their first home, Stephanie's birth, family vacations, Thomas's arrival. 7 minutes into the presentation, I finally appeared. A solemn 3-year-old in unfamiliar clothes, standing slightly apart in a family portrait. The caption read, The Wilsons, welcome, Rachel. Not Rachel joins the family or the Wilsons become 5. The phrasing positioned me as a visitor, not a member. The slideshow continued, spanning 4 decades of family history. Of the 100+ photos, I appeared in perhaps 15, often at the edge of group shots or partially obscured behind others. Several significant events in my life, my high school graduation as valedictorian, my college acceptance, my first industry award, were omitted entirely. As the presentation concluded to appreciative applause, I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment alone. In the elegant marble sanctuary, I leaned against the sink, breathing deeply to compose myself. The face in the mirror looked calm, but I recognized the tightness around my eyes that signaled emotional strain. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. How's it going? Exactly as expected, I typed back. I'm the outsider looking in. Again. Remember what Dr. Michaels said, he responded immediately. Their limitations aren't a reflection of your worth. I smiled at his support, reapplied my lipstick, and returned to the dining room determined to maintain my dignity regardless of how the evening proceeded. I returned to find dessert being served miniature replicas of my parents' wedding cake, each decorated with a chocolate 40 and paired with champagne flutes for another round of toasts. Taking my seat at table 3, I noticed Thomas glancing at me with concern from the head table. Stephanie clinked her glass, commanding attention once more. Before we enjoy this amazing recreation of Mom and Dad's wedding cake, we thought it would be nice for each of their children to say a few words. She smiled at our parents. I've already shared my thoughts. So Thomas, would you like to go next? Thomas stood awkwardly, champagne sloshing in his glass. Yeah. So, congratulations, Mom and Dad. 40 years is incredible. He paused, clearly uncomfortable with public speaking. You guys have always been there for me, supporting all my decisions even when they weren't always the best ones. A few knowing chuckles rippled through the room. I love you both, and I'm proud to be your son. To Mom and Dad, everyone raised their glasses. Thomas caught my eye and gave a slight nod, silently yielding the floor. I stood, smoothing my dress. I'd like to say something too, if I may. Stephanie's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, Rachel. Just keep it brief, we have the cake cutting and dancing still to come. Ignoring her attempt to minimize my contribution, I turned to face our parents. Mom, Dad, when you chose to make me part of your family, you changed the entire trajectory of my life. I saw my mother's expression soften slightly. Family isn't just about blood relations, but about the connections we build through love, understanding, and shared experiences. Thank you for— Speaking of blood relations, Stephanie interrupted. Did I mention the ancestry test Bradley and I did? Turns out I inherited Dad's Norwegian heritage and Mom's Italian side. Thomas got the Irish from both sides. Genetics are fascinating, aren't they? The abrupt subject change created an awkward pause. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. As I was saying, I continued steadily. Thank you for these 40 years of— Oh, Rachel. Stephanie cut in again. That reminds me. Did you ever try to find your birth parents? I was telling Mom that those DNA services make it so easy now. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. My mother studied her champagne glass while my father cleared his throat. Stephanie, Thomas warned quietly. What? She replied with feigned innocence. I'm just saying that while we're celebrating Wilson family connections, Rachel might have her own family history to explore. The implication hung in the air. I wasn't really a Wilson. Any meaningful toast I might have offered was now overshadowed by Stephanie's pointed reminder of my outsider status. Actually, I said, setting down my glass with deliberate care, I was more interested in celebrating the family right here. But clearly, that's not the priority tonight. I could have let it go. Could have sat down and endured the rest of the evening in silence. But 27 years of accumulated slights and exclusions crystallized in that moment into a clarity I couldn't ignore. May I ask you something, Stephanie? Has it been difficult all these years, sharing your parents' attention with someone who wasn't biologically theirs? Because you've spent nearly 3 decades making sure I understood my place always slightly outside the real Wilson family circle, gasps and murmurs rippled through the gathering. Aunt Louise whispered, "Oh my," to no one in particular. Stephanie's face flushed. I don't know what you're talking about. If you felt excluded, that's your own insecurity. Is it? I countered, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Was it my insecurity that kept me off the slideshow tonight? Or placed me at table 3 while everyone else in the immediate family sits together? Or had you constantly introducing me as adopted Rachel my entire childhood? Rachel, please, my mother interjected. This is hardly the time or place. When is the time, Mom? We've never talked about this. Not once in 27 years have we acknowledged how differently I've been treated. Bradley stood, placing a protective hand on Stephanie's shoulder. I think you're overreacting. Stephanie put tremendous effort into planning this perfect evening, and you're making it about yourself. I'm making an anniversary dinner about myself by wanting to toast my own parents? By expecting to be treated as an equal member of the family? I looked around the room, noting the discomfort on many faces, but also the flickers of recognition on others. I've spent my entire life trying to earn a place in this family. Never complaining. Always grateful to be included at all. Maybe it's finally time to acknowledge what we all know but never say. In this family, adoption makes me something less. Well, you're not really a Wilson, are you? Stephanie said, her voice cold. Not when it comes down to it. We've included you in everything out of courtesy, but you don't share our blood, our history, our actual DNA. You're essentially a long-term house guest. The room fell completely silent. Even Stephanie seemed momentarily shocked by her own candor. My father finally spoke, his tone conciliatory but weak. Stephanie, that's not fair. Rachel is part of this family. Is she? Stephanie challenged. Then why did you set up trust funds differently for her than for Thomas and me? Why did you help us with down payments but told Rachel to build credit on her own first? Actions speak louder than words, Dad. I hadn't known about the trusts or the down payments. The revelation stung, confirming suspicions I'd harbored but could never prove. My mother reached for my hand across the table. Rachel, sweetheart, we've always loved you. Perhaps we've made mistakes. But, perhaps? I withdrew my hand. Mom, you've let this dynamic exist for my entire life. You've watched Stephanie exclude me repeatedly and never once intervened. Your silence was permission. Thomas finally found his voice. Rachel's right. We've all seen it happening and said nothing. I'm sorry, Rach. I should have spoken up years ago. Stephanie turned on him. Oh, please, you just want to look good in front of everyone. You've never had a problem with how things were. Because I was afraid of you. Thomas shot back. You've controlled this family's narrative since we were kids. The facade of Wilson family harmony was cracking open in front of 25 witnesses. Relatives and friends sat frozen, dessert forks suspended midair, uncertain whether to watch or look away from this unexpected family drama. Stephanie stood abruptly. If you're so uncomfortable, Rachel, maybe you should find another table. Her voice dripped with disdain. Or, better yet, another family altogether. Isn't that what adopted kids do? Keep looking for somewhere they belong? It was the most nakedly cruel thing she had ever said to me, and she had said it publicly, in front of everyone who mattered to our family. The room collectively held its breath. With as much dignity as I could muster, I gathered my purse and stood. Thank you for making your feelings so clear after all these years, Stephanie. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry this conversation had to happen tonight. I truly did just want to celebrate your marriage. As I turned to leave, I caught Thomas's eye. He looked torn between following me and staying with our parents. I gave him a small nod, releasing him from responsibility. This was my battle, and perhaps it was long overdue. I had taken only 3 steps toward the exit when the maitre d' appeared beside me, leather folder in hand. Excuse me, Miss Wilson? I have the bill for your party. I paused, confused. I think there's a mistake. My sister, Stephanie Williams, is handling the payment arrangements. The maitre d' looked uncertain. Miss Williams indicated that you would be settling the account this evening. She specifically pointed you out when I inquired. I turned back toward the family table. Stephanie was watching the exchange with a smug expression that confirmed this was no misunderstanding. Rachel has generously offered to treat everyone, she announced loudly. Isn't that right, Rachel? Since you're doing so well with your new promotion, the trap was perfectly executed. If I denied it, I would appear petty and ruin my parents' anniversary further. If I accepted, I would face a bill I suspected would be substantial. Let me see it, I said quietly to the maitre d'. He handed me the leather folder. Inside was a detailed invoice totaling $3,270.48. I scanned the itemized list with growing disbelief. Dom Perignon champagne at $250 per bottle. Multiple bottles of premium wines ranging from $180 to $350 each. Special off-menu appetizers. Surcharges for the private room and custom service. The quartet. The cake. The audio-visual equipment for the slideshow. All of it now apparently my responsibility. Is there a problem? Stephanie called out, her voice carrying throughout the now silent room. I calculated quickly. My savings account held about $5,000 money I'd been putting aside for a possible down payment someday. This bill would devastate those savings, but I had enough to cover it. The real cost wasn't financial. It was the public humiliation Stephanie had orchestrated as her parting shot. "She can't afford it," Stephanie stage whispered to Bradley, loud enough for me and several nearby tables to hear. "I told you we should have collected in advance." I thought of countless childhood moments. Stephanie accidentally excluding me from birthday party invitations. Stephanie telling neighborhood kids they didn't have to include me in games because I wasn't a real sister. Stephanie suggesting to relatives that my academic achievements were due to trying extra hard to compensate. This was merely the adult version of the same dynamic, using money instead of social currency to reinforce my outsider status. Thomas stood up. "This is ridiculous. The bill should be split among all of us." "We already contributed by planning everything," Bradley replied smoothly. "And we brought the premium wines as our gift. The arrangement with Rachel was made weeks ago." No such arrangement existed, but denying it now would make me appear not only unable to pay but dishonest as well. I had two choices: walk out and leave the bill unpaid, creating a scene that would forever be associated with my parents' anniversary, or pay it and maintain what little dignity remained in this situation. Dr. Michaels's voice echoed in my mind. "You can't control their behavior, only your response to it." With steady hands, I withdrew my credit card and handed it to the maitre d'. "The gratuity has already been included," he murmured, perhaps sensing the tension. 20%. I nodded, signed the receipt, and tucked my copy into my purse. Then I walked slowly around the room, looking each family member in the eye. Aunt Louise appeared mortified. My cousin Jen mouthed, "I'm so sorry." My father studied his dessert with unusual intensity, unable to meet my gaze. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears she didn't let fall. When I reached the head table again, I addressed my parents directly, ignoring Stephanie entirely. "Congratulations on 40 years together. I hope they've brought you everything you wanted." I paused, then added quietly so only our immediate family could hear. "The real cost of this evening wasn't the money. It was the final illusion that I was ever truly welcome in this family." Stephanie rolled her eyes. Always so dramatic. Thomas half rose. "Rachel." "Wait." I shook my head. "It's okay, Thomas. Some truths are just expensive to learn." With that, I turned and walked out of Le Cirque, past the monkey sconces and elegant diners enjoying their Saturday evening, into the warm June night. For the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending anymore, not to myself, not to the Wilsons, not to anyone. The taxi driver noticed my expression as I slid into the back seat. "Bad night?" "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "I think it might be the beginning of a better one." I gave him Michael's address instead of mine. I needed to be somewhere I was genuinely wanted. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, my phone began vibrating with incoming messages. Thomas, my mother, even a cousin I rarely spoke with. I silenced it and watched the glittering Manhattan skyline through the window, feeling a strange lightness despite the financial hit. $3,270 was a steep price, but perhaps worth every penny for the clarity it had purchased. My phone's screen illuminated at 6:37 a.m. with the first text from Thomas. "Are you okay?" That was brutal. "Call me." By the time I finished my first cup of coffee in Michael's kitchen, more messages had arrived. "Mom, we need to talk about last night. Your father and I never meant to make you feel less than Thomas and Stephanie. Please call when you're ready. Dad, your mother is upset. We should clear the air. Cousin Jen, I can't believe what happened. Are you all right?" Steph was way out of line. "Aunt Louise, Stephanie's behavior was inexcusable. Your uncle and I have always considered you a true Wilson." And finally, from Stephanie herself, "You really know how to make everything about you. Mom and Dad's anniversary is ruined thanks to your little performance. I've attached the receipt from last night since you left without it. There were additional charges for the custom dessert platters. Venmo me $127.45. I showed Michael the messages as he made breakfast. He read them silently, his expression darkening at Stephanie's demand. "She can't be serious," he said, returning my phone. After everything that happened? That's Stephanie, I replied, accepting the plate of scrambled eggs he offered. She'll never acknowledge she did anything wrong. The narrative will be that I caused a scene and ruined the anniversary. Are you going to respond to any of them? I considered the question while eating. Not Stephanie, obviously. I'll call Thomas later. My parents. I need some time. And the Venmo request? I laughed despite myself. I think I've contributed enough to Wilson family celebrations for one lifetime. I decided to block Stephanie's number temporarily, the first boundary I'd ever set with her. The relief was immediate and surprising. Monday morning brought a new challenge, facing colleagues after an emotionally exhausting weekend. My boss, Natalie, noticed my distraction during our weekly strategy meeting. Everything okay, Rachel? You seem off today. I considered giving a generic response, but opted for honesty. Family drama over the weekend. Nothing I can't handle, but it's taking some processing. To my surprise, Natalie nodded with understanding. Family has a unique ability to press our buttons. Take the afternoon if you need it. Her casual kindness brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Why was it easier for my boss to show compassion than my own family? That evening, I received a call from an unexpected source. Bradley, Stephanie's husband. Rachel, I hope I'm not overstepping, he began awkwardly. I wanted to apologize for Saturday night. You're apologizing? I was genuinely surprised. You usually back Stephanie unconditionally. He sighed heavily. Look, I love my wife. But what happened wasn't right. You should know, he lowered his voice. Stephanie's been jealous of you for years. Jealous? Of me? The concept seemed absurd. She's had everything handed to her. Except your parents' admiration, he replied. Martha and George brag about you constantly. Your independence, your career success, how you've made it on your own. Stephanie notices. The revelation stunned me. All these years, while I'd envied Stephanie's secure place in the family, she'd apparently resented my achievements. That doesn't excuse what happened, I said finally. No, it doesn't, he agreed. I just thought you should know. And Rachel? Not everyone in the family shares Stephanie's view. Not by a long shot. After Bradley's call, I received messages from extended family members I rarely heard from. Cousin Ethan offered to help with legal action for the fraudulent bill if I wanted to pursue it. Great Aunt Mildred, at 83, sent a handwritten note calling Stephanie's behavior a disgrace to the Wilson name. Uncle Peter, my father's brother, called to say he and his wife were appalled and embarrassed by what had transpired. This unexpected support network was still developing when my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment the following Saturday morning. We need to talk, my father said when I opened the door, his tone suggesting this was non-negotiable. My mother stood slightly behind him, clutching her purse with white knuckles. Please, Rachel. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let them enter. My small Brooklyn apartment felt even smaller with their presence. They sat awkwardly on my sofa while I prepared coffee in the kitchenette. I'm sorry we didn't call first, my mother began. We were afraid you wouldn't agree to see us. I might not have, I admitted, placing mugs on the coffee table. I'm still processing everything. That's understandable, my father said, surprising me with his acknowledgement. What happened at the restaurant was unfortunate. Unfortunate? I repeated incredulously. Dad, Stephanie publicly humiliated me and stuck me with a $3,000 bill. That's not unfortunate, that's cruel and calculated. We've spoken to Stephanie, my mother interjected. She feels terrible about how things escalated. I noticed she said how things escalated, not what she did. Has she offered to reimburse me for the dinner bill she manipulated me into paying? I asked. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We thought perhaps we could help with that, my father offered. Given the circumstances. That's not the point, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. The point is that for my entire life, I've been treated as less than a full member of this family, and neither of you has ever acknowledged it, much less addressed it. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Rachel, that's not fair. We've always loved you. Love isn't enough, Mom. Did you know Stephanie introduced me as adopted Rachel throughout my childhood? Did you know she deliberately excluded me from social events with family friends? Did you notice I appeared in less than 15% of the photos in that anniversary slideshow? We never meant to make you feel different, she insisted. But I am different in your eyes. I always have been. I set my coffee down. Mom, when was the last time you spontaneously hugged me? You touch Stephanie and Thomas without thinking, fixing his tie, brushing her hair, but you've always been physically distant with me. Did you ever wonder why? My mother looked stricken. I didn't realize. George, she turned to my father, did we really do that? He shifted uncomfortably. Martha, this isn't productive. We came to make peace, not to be accused. No, we came to understand, my mother corrected him firmly. And if that means hearing painful truths, then we need to listen. She turned back to me. Rachel, I struggled to bond with you when you first came to us. You were so quiet, so watchful. I thought you needed space, not smothering. By the time I realized my mistake, the pattern was set. It was the most honest thing she'd ever shared with me about our relationship. And the trust funds? I asked my father. The down payments for Stephanie and Thomas, but not for me? He flushed. We thought you valued your independence. You never asked for help, because I knew it wouldn't be offered. Do you realize the double standard? Thomas has received financial support for years despite repeated failures, while I worked multiple jobs through college despite my scholarship. We're not perfect parents, my father conceded grudgingly. But we did our best. Your best still left me feeling like a permanent guest in your family, I said quietly. And now I need to decide what kind of relationship we can have going forward, one with honest communication and equal treatment, or none at all. They left an hour later, our conversation unresolved but irrevocably changed. For the first time, they'd heard my authentic experience without dismissing or minimizing it. Whether that would translate to meaningful change remained to be seen. That evening, I discovered Stephanie had taken our conflict public. She'd posted on social media, heartbroken that someone would use our parents' 40th anniversary celebration for attention-seeking drama. Family means supporting each other, not making demands. Blood is thicker than water, and some people will never understand that sacred bond. Several relatives had already commented with variations of two sides to every story and praying for healing. The public narrative was being established, with me cast as the ungrateful adopted daughter who ruined a special occasion. I closed the app without responding. Stephanie's need to control the story no longer had power over me. 3 months after the disastrous anniversary dinner, I sat in a circle of chairs in a community center meeting room, sharing my story for the first time with people who truly understood. I'm Rachel, I began. I was adopted at age 3. And 3 months ago, my adoptive sister told me to find another table at a family dinner because I wasn't really part of the family, then stuck me with the $3,270 bill. Sympathetic murmurs circulated through the adult adoptees support group. The facilitator, Diane, nodded encouragingly. Thank you for sharing, Rachel. What has happened since then? A lot of reflection, I replied. I've realized that I spent 27 years trying to earn a place in a family that always kept me slightly outside their inner circle. The dinner just made explicit what had always been implicit. A woman across from me nodded. The invisible wall, I know it well. Exactly, I agreed. In therapy, Dr. Michaels helped me understand that my adoption experience created core wounds around abandonment and belonging. I unconsciously believed I had to be perfect to be lovable, and even then, it might not be enough. Attending this group had been Dr. Michael's suggestion. You need community with people who share this specific experience, she'd advised. Your friends can offer support, but they can't offer understanding the way other adoptees can. She was right. These weekly meetings had become a cornerstone of my healing process. Here, I didn't have to explain the complicated grief of being grateful for my adoption while also mourning the family bonds that never fully formed. I've established different relationships with different family members now, I continued. My brother Thomas and I meet for coffee every other week when he's in the city. He's apologized for not standing up for me more over the years, and we're developing a relationship as adults that isn't defined by our shared history. Thomas had surprised me with his commitment to rebuilding our connection. During our first post-anniversary meeting, he'd been brutally honest. "I failed you as a brother, Rach." I saw what Stephanie was doing, but I was too cowardly to challenge her. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to be better going forward." "What about your parents?" asked an older man in the group. "We're working on it," I said carefully. "They've acknowledged some of their behaviors that contributed to my outsider status, though they still struggle to fully understand. We talk on the phone every other Sunday, short conversations with clear boundaries. It's not perfect, but it's honest for the first time." My mother had made more effort than my father, attending a parent meeting of the Adoptive Families Association to educate herself. She'd called afterward in tears. "I never considered how you might have experienced our family differently," she'd admitted. "I'm sorry it took so long for me to listen." "And your sister?" Diane prompted. "Complete estrangement," I said without regret. Stephanie sent a formal letter through her attorney demanding I cease defamation of her character to family members and stating she considers our relationship permanently terminated. Honestly, it's a relief. Pretending was exhausting. Some relationships were worth saving, others needed to end. Understanding the difference had been liberating. The most unexpected development, I continued, arrived in my mailbox last week. I pulled out an envelope with trembling fingers. I did a DNA ancestry test after the dinner, not to find my birth family necessarily, but to connect with my own genetic heritage after years of being told I didn't have the Wilson traits. Last week, I received a message through the service. My birth mother had registered. She's been looking for me for years. I swallowed hard. Her name is Elaine. She was 16 when she had me. She's a librarian in Oregon now. The group leaned forward collectively. We've exchanged emails. She explained the circumstances of my adoption. Her parents forced her to give me up. She named me Sophia. My voice caught. She's the first person I've ever met who shares my DNA, my features, my biological history. "Are you going to meet her?" someone asked. "I'm considering it," I replied. "But I'm not rushing. This journey has taught me that family relationships need to be built on honesty and mutual respect, whether they're biological or not." Outside the support group, other aspects of my life were evolving too. Michael had proposed on a rainy Sunday morning in my apartment, dropping to one knee beside my coffee table. "I love you, Rachel Wilson," he'd said, holding up a vintage emerald ring. "Not because you're perfect, but because you're authentically yourself, brave enough to stand up for your worth even when it's difficult. Will you marry me?" I'd said yes through happy tears, recognizing that he was offering exactly what I'd always longed for: unconditional love without performance requirements. My chosen family continued to expand. The Patels, my childhood neighbors, had visited New York specifically to take me to dinner after hearing about the anniversary incident. Mrs. Patel had held my hands across the table and said, "You were always the daughter of our heart, Rachel. Family is who treats you like you belong, not who shares your blood." For Thanksgiving, I was organizing a family of choice dinner in my apartment, inviting friends, supportive relatives, and colleagues who had become important to me. No performative harmony, no walking on eggshells, just genuine connection. The most profound change, however, was internal. I no longer measured my worth by the Wilson family's acceptance. I'd stopped trying to earn my place or prove my value. The $3,270 dinner bill, painful as it was financially, had purchased my freedom from those patterns. "I still have the receipt," I told the support group, pulling the folded paper from my wallet. "It reminds me that sometimes the price of truth is high, but living authentically is worth every penny." As our session ended, I looked around at these strangers who had become a community of understanding. For years, I thought something was wrong with me because I couldn't make my adoptive family love me completely. Now I understand that the failure wasn't mine. Some people simply cannot give what they haven't resolved within themselves. On my way home, I called Michael to share insights from the meeting. As we talked, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years, not because all my wounds had healed, but because I'd stopped reopening them in hopes of different results. The journey ahead still held challenges. I hadn't decided whether to meet Elaine in person. My relationship with my parents remained tentative. The occasional family event would require careful navigation. But for the first time, I approached these challenges from a position of self-worth rather than desperate belonging-seeking. That evening, as Michael and I walked through Brooklyn discussing wedding plans, he asked, "Do you ever regret speaking up at the dinner? Would it have been easier to just keep the peace?" I considered the question seriously. The dinner cost me $3,270 and a lifetime of pretending. It was the best money I've ever spent. I stopped to face him directly. What's your story of finding belonging? What family dynamics shaped you? I'd love to know more about your journey. And I genuinely meant it because real connection happens when we share our authentic experiences, not when we perform expected roles. If you're watching this and my story resonates with you, please know you're not alone. Whether you're adopted or simply feel like an outsider in your own family, your worth isn't determined by others' capacity to see and appreciate you. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. How have you navigated family dynamics where you felt excluded or different? Like and subscribe if this story touched something in you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be fully seen and accepted. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes finding your true home means letting go of the places where you were never allowed to fully belong.